say to an extent. I used to say that, I think in absolute colors, there's black, there's white, there's gray. There are no shades where I'm concerned, So by the time you start talking about the various degrees of shades in a color, you've lost me. So knowing my preferences or my natural style, being very reserved, I I have found that I have evolved, and I think I'm still evolving over time. I love my company. I enjoy my company, but I also find that I can handle human interaction, but in limited doses. And I find that I need to, get back to my quiet space, to recharge, to get out of all of that and come back. But over the years, incidentally, my roles, for the bulk of my career at Coca-Cola, my roles were customer facing and people facing, which was totally the opposite, of my natural work styles. I would prefer, to be in the background, yet I was more or less the voice and the face of the business, for quite a bit of time. And then my later years in NBC, managing an aspect of sales. I mean, I was constantly in contact with people, and how did I survive? I think it was the understanding of, my work styles, and also the fact that this was the role that I had chosen. I wasn't forced into it. It was a role that I had chosen, and understanding, how that needed to um, play out. I had to learn interacting with people. Communications, yes, was my background, but also listening to people, understanding how they process information and how my words are coming through and how they're receiving that information became very, very important. I think I had the benefit of an amazing teacher early on in my career. Her name is Comfort Endem, and she taught me how to observe, how to listen to people, to body language, to what is being said, what is not being said, and how to also respond. So sitting in meetings, I remember we had a GM that an engineer, science background, and now managing a sales organization. And when you had people who were talking, very verbose, explaining stuff, not using numbers, you would lose him. And I would just watch his body language, when people are saying and just being long-winded. When he starts flicking his hair, I knew that, the temperature was rising. The next thing, when his hand comes down on the table, he's going, what is the issue? And I learned, very early on how all of, our personalities, come to play. And I think it has served me over time and, now in my coaching practice as well, just being able to understand how people are wired and for them to understand that every other person is just different. It's not so much of a good or bad in terms of, their work styles. We are just different and it's just that. And when you understand the differences and how people communicate, how they think and process information, it helps you to be able to communicate even with them a lot better. Let me pause for now.
I think if I could just jump in, I think it's really amazing to hear you talk about how your personality came out in the workplace, and it was essentially the same. Because I could definitely relate to a few things that you said from my own personal experience. Um, so I also like to balance like interaction with people and kind of just sitting alone and doing my work and getting my work done. And in my previous role, like I said, I was a counselor and a trainer. So it's a very people facing job. And I was working with children as well. So it was children around ages 6 to around 13. And as
Well,
you know, it needs a lot of energy to deal with children. And so I would find myself at the end of the day very drained. And I would go home just inside, sit in silence, complete silence to recover. And I think how that evolved for me is I found myself preferring the aspects of my work over time. Just I was pulled towards the aspects of my work that were less interaction. I mean, required
mm,
more of a balance at least. where I sit and work and then go out and interact. So aspects like training, of course, you have to sit, design, um, plan, and then go out, interact with people, train them, do a workshop, and then come back and kind of evaluate it. And so um, it came more natural to me, the training, than the counseling, because it was more in line with who I am and what I preferred in terms of
Mm.
interactions versus kind of like sitting alone and doing my work. So I can definitely relate to that. And it's amazing how you've had a lot of years of experience. I have about 2 years. And we've kind of noticed the same patterns. Um, and it's very
Mm.
interesting. And I like what you said as well about the leader and how, he had kind of like his tells, and based on his work styles, you could tell what was coming up, and based on what he
Mhm.
was exhibiting. Because as a business psychologist, there's a lot of research as well that says that talks about the role of like a leader's emotions on the entire
Yeah.
team. So
Mhm.
how they feel, yes, but also how they express it to the team can set the tone, can help people kind of either work on issues or really be open and honest and express themselves. And um, as personalities and work styles clash, they remain the person who kind of has to, I think, maintain the most awareness
Mm.
so that they can keep influencing the team. Um, I don't know what you think about that with like the leader's role and what the awareness they have to maintain about their work styles and how it affects other people. What has been the experience?
Oh, I think it's very key.
Mm,
The leader's awareness of their own individual, personality and their work styles, and their ability to adapt it to members of the team and the team as a whole is
mm,
extremely, important. I mean, I would liken leaders to conductors, of an orchestra, where you have individual instruments and people playing those instruments. I mean, a symphony, the beauty of a symphony is the music or the pieces that they're able to come together and generate. But when
mm,
you have um, a conductor that is totally oblivious of all the instruments, and or prefers certain instruments above the others. All you're hearing is this, it's a discord. It's not a nice tune. You keep hearing certain instruments, and it's the same way with a leader
mm,
who isn't fully aware of the different personalities and the styles that he has in the team, and he's preferring some to the exclusion of the other, or to the downplaying of the other. The ability to manage all and let everything come out it doesn't always happen all the time, but in a nice piece of music is extremely important, and the leader's awareness is key.
Fantastic.
absolutely.
Fantastic. I love that. And I love the idea of an orchestra, the
Mm,
idea that these different instruments and musicians, each an expert in their own instrument, and playing
yeah.
Mm,
their own, tune or their own part, and they come together and they form a
Hmm.
greater whole. It's also really interesting that we all have this in common that we are not necessarily we didn't think we would be people facing
Yeah.
because believe it or not, I am not really like an extroverted
Really?
people person
are
kind of
you
thing. I can do
sure?
it. I get that. I get it. I get this question. I've been called a liar. Like, no way. There's no way that's not you, right? You seem very extroverted, but I'm not. I'm very much an introvert. And like you, Adeyanju, I had to learn that I have to withdraw. I have to go
Mm,
into what I call my cave. I have to do this famous me time. I need 20, 30 minutes to decompress and to come back to recharge my batteries so I can be the best I can be. But it's also weird that we really chose professions and challenges that put us in front of other human beings and really at the forefront of interacting with people. And it's not always easy
mm,
because when there are people and when you are dealing with people in business, there's going to be conflict. Could you
yeah.
maybe share some of the, especially from a communication point of view, some of the work style clashes you've observed, like as a coach, in terms of like maybe patterns you've observed in team interventions. Because, sometimes things at work can get pretty hot, people work very hard. People get very stressed. We all have ambitious targets. And here you are, the coach. You're being brought into this situation. Sometimes things are great and you just adjust a few things. And sometimes it feels like they've parachuted you into a war zone, given you a water bottle and a pencil and said, like, sort this out.
I would maybe look at two scenarios. One in my previous role and also working with a team. Using myself as an example, I once had a boss who was very big picture thinker, visionary, very demanding. If we were to go into personalities, he will be the domineering, that D, that very outspoken. It's more what he thinks and what he wants, and 99% and maybe, okay, 1% what every other person thinks. And of course, the way he processes information and thinks is different. Give him summary, he can see high level. You don't need to go into detail. And for him, it's very high action learning by doing, trial and error. He's there jumping into those, woods. And I'm coming from a background of, as they called it, prose. We use a lot of words and all of that. And also my personality being very detail oriented, it asked me to prepare a report, for a customer. And there I was, went into the history of a customer and da 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 and all of that, nice executive summary, I thought. Very proud of myself. And it comes and, waves the paper and says, we don't do this. We don't talk. We don't use words. We use numbers. Because I understood his personality and I knew that the words were exactly what it was. I didn't, take it personal. It was obvious that, okay, you need to make that shift. It's a different thing. Use the numbers, they convey a story. You don't need to explain the numbers. If you, at best, just highlight. He can read, he understands. And, just that knowledge helped me, to be able to change the document. I still felt a bit hot, but I, went past myself and sent it back to him, and then he came back and said, now you're speaking our language, welcome to sales. That for me was it was a baptism, but an understanding of this person and quickly adapting my own style to his style helped me make that jump, so to say. I could have been brooding, saying, what does he, what's he trying to say? Does he think I'm stupid? I've had how many years of executive experience? I was his peer at some point. I took a leadership layer cut because of where I was going. I could have sat, and I'm just in my head thinking and analyzing and just concluding I'm going to have a harsh time with this person. He doesn't like me, but it was totally not about me. You were asked to provide something, and what you did was not up to par or the format, where he wanted. Now, fast forward, still using myself as an example before I go into the team, working with another, my GM, he wanted a report, but I'd learned also to ask, okay, what exactly do you want? What are you looking for? Who are your audience? So I have an understanding of how I need to present it, and then coming back and him making minor, corrections and sending it off. Now, working with a team, this was a team of about 10 people with the leader. Yes, there were about 11, and different personalities, different work styles. They had different portfolios and different years of experience, within the business, and also, experience generally. And coming into the team, it was obvious that there were multiple elephants in the room, not just one elephant. And there they were, everybody, coming in. Hey, hi. Some came in from, various locations that were not based in HQ. And everybody was saying hi and all of that. To all intents and purposes, this was a very cohesive, tight team. And when we got into, the very first activity, it was obvious that there was so much, amiss. Somebody made a statement and one person just flew off, challenging how he could have said that. And you're wondering what was said and what was the response. And we had to pause and say, okay, we're bringing up an activity or an assessment that, should actually come like maybe the second before the second session, to say we need to fast track this. We all need to agree. How do you work together as a team? Have you agreed on an alliance which takes into cognizance how you communicate? Are you allowed to say things? Can people challenge each other? Can people even challenge the leader? And it was obvious that was, missing. The team didn't feel safe. The team felt, that there were cliques, in the midst of, in the team. And because as a leader as well, that was something that, we really didn't, highlight. An understanding of the personalities of everybody in the team wasn't really available. So like, more or less like a map to say, okay, what are the different personalities of the people in my team, and how do I bring all of them together? How do I even make them realize who is who? So you understand when you're talking, or, if you make a statement, and a simple statement, that people can make, like maybe bringing people to attention to say, oh, can we just focus on the matter of hand? Somebody else might receive it, as an insult. Are you saying I'm waffling, or what exactly are you saying? But all the person is saying is that, okay, we can come to all of this, but let's just address this. So it became very important for people to realize who they were in the team and how they were also communicating and relating to other members of the team, and how the team, was coming together as a whole. It's always interesting, watching people and watching the different, styles. And when you realize that people are different, and putting a full stop after that word, different. Don't add anything to it. They're different. Then understand the differences so you can connect with them. Yeah.
Thank you. That is amazing. And I loved how you touched on the issue of emotional intelligence. Maybe you could give us a few more insights into that. What do you think, Doreen? I'm really excited about the emotional intelligence aspect of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was thinking around the same lines, really, that you make a strong business case, Adeyanju, maybe without even knowing it, for work styles assessments, for emotional
Yes.
intelligence assessments. Um, because in your explanations, you're really bringing out the kind of like the tensions or the issues that these assessments for emotional intelligence and for work styles are aimed to addressing and or minimizing. And so, for example, me personally, the first time I did a work styles assessment was maybe 2 years ago. I didn't know about it before. And before I did my master's, my attitude towards an assessment like that would have been, but why do I need to do this? I can do the job. I have the qualifications. Why do I also need to tell you, oh, I like working with people, but not very much? And it really makes you, but now from my explanations are, well, of course, from having done and read the research and understood the role of work style assessments, you see how a person's personality, a person's emotional intelligence, how it really plays into the team and how it can either add to the team and make the whole climate and the whole dynamic easy and make work go forward, or it can solve the team, for lack of a better word. And so I really think it remains very important for everybody to be able to understand and make sense of their emotions, make sense of what their feelings are coming from, and how they should address that in order to be able to reach the goals and achieve the goals of the team of what they're doing. Um, so yeah, definitely a great business case for emotional intelligence tests and work styles assessments. And also your explanation about the I think you said a team of 11 people, all amazing at what they do, but just kind of like a nightmare to work together as a team. But also it can also be just elements in it, really. As in each person's culture, how is communication, how do they communicate? What is acceptable? How do they address people who are their seniors? I think you mentioned something like that. And I think that's something that at Zanga we've kind of managed to um, do well in terms of helping people understand how culture can affect people, people's work styles and work preferences, and how it can show up, and what as coaches and other people, Asian practitioners, for example, what they can do about it. So yeah, that is my insight on Amadeus from experience, and but also as a business psychologist.
Very valuable, and I think it matches with what Adeyanju has been sharing. In fact, Adeyanju, I'm a bit curious. In your practice, given what we're talking about, the different work styles and the team dynamics, and
Yeah.
how sensitive this gets sometimes, um, what has been your experience in terms of using assessments in this process? What do assessments bring to this process and to this practice and conversation?
Mm. Awareness, and awareness on
Mm,
different levels. I think the fact that people can begin to understand themselves and others is the first level of awareness. I think someone needs,
oops.
yeah.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
All right. Yeah. So the awareness for me, and deepening that awareness is extremely key. So when assessments are used, and I'm very big on assessments, and I would always ask clients if they've done any kind of assessment, and talk to them about the various types of assessments that are available and the ones that I'm certified to use. It really helps in them understanding themselves, and also understanding members of their team as well, and finding the Zanga African metrics assessment was, I was able to put things together, especially the cultural dimensions, and really understand certain things that perhaps it was at the periphery for me, or I had
Mm,
seen and experienced, in the course of my career, but I really could not put things together or make deep meaning of it. It then became, very clear, understanding the impact, of our culture on, our work styles, and how that even comes to play, depending on, the organization that we work for, and the cultures, and the cultural contexts, where those organizations are. And then when you have multi-cultures, within an organization, how then do you adapt, your work styles to the different cultures, and still, you're able to move your team together towards, shared goals, or, shared outcomes, or even achieve, the business um, objectives, is extremely key. So I find that it is very important. I mean, I am a big advocate, of assessments for the roles that they play in terms of deepening understanding, and, surfacing awareness, and also providing you with practical tools or actions in which you can take to better connect with people, better lead people. Ultimately, in the organization, is really about achieving the business objectives. So
yeah.
that's it has been my experience of working with assessments.
Fantastic. And you've touched on something really interesting, something we're very passionate about at Zanga, and that is leading diverse teams, or maybe looking at when you have a very culturally diverse, we're talking about cultural diversity. In Africa, we operate within a high context cultural framework, which is very different from how you lead traditionally in low context cultures, such as the United States, such as those of Western Europe, where much of the management and leadership theory that we apply in the organizations and businesses we work in, we found that. So I'd love to kind of also get your insight and experience in terms of work styles in this particular conversation, and in leading and coaching diverse high context teams. What has your experience been in regards to this?
I'll go back first to a leader. He was a group CEO for Hellenic, and he'd actually he started out his career in Europe and then in Africa. So he had the understanding of both cultures, both the high and low context cultures. And he had such an amazing way to, of weaving around these, cultures, because he understood, the cultures. Our culture is very big on, things like loyalty, respect is capital letters, bold and neon colors when it comes to our culture, and being able to use that compared to other cultures where, the leader just comes says what he needs to say, however he needs to say it, and or she needs to say it, and, walks away. Here, there's a lot of deference, inference, very high regard for authority and all of that. And in working with leaders, particularly in our culture, is making them understand the impact of, the culture, especially if the leader has experience in low context cultures, to say, you need to understand where you're at now and the people that you're dealing with. You call a team meeting and you want your team to people to talk about freely. There's silence when you ask, right? So, what do you think we should do? Silence. And if someone then decides, like, oh, I echo your thoughts, I'm like, what's going on? I don't want you echoing my thoughts. Or I totally align. All those buzzwords we use in, the business world are fully aligned with you.
Yeah.
Or just repeating everything I've said, but using different words. That you need to realize that hierarchy plays, a very strong role here. People defer to the leader as all wise, all knowing, not to be challenged, and, just go with the flow. So for you to get your team comfortable with sharing their views, you have to draw them out. You have to let them realize that, you're here because you're intelligent and you're a contributor. And at this level, it's not about echoing my thoughts or, just aligning with everything I have to say. And you literally, for some people, you have to draw it out of them. And different ways in which, you can do them, have them lead that meeting so that they're the ones who are drawing out, other people, or you're not physically in the room. And I've been in sessions where the leader being in the room for a team, engagement was a drawback. The people
Mm.
could not freely express themselves because it just was not done. You don't talk where your elders are, and whether it's by age or even gender as well. So it's bringing all these dynamics, to the surface, and getting the leader, and also members of the team super aware of what is at play is extremely important.
Absolutely, I would have to agree. And I once used the phrase that you just said, I echo your thoughts, but I stopped myself from doing that, of course. Um, but of course, we've been talking about a lot of things, and I appreciate some of it has been kind of like on a more general level.
Mm,
But more than 20 people listening to us in this conversation, more on LinkedIn, more on YouTube in the future. And you are a coach, and I just want to take advantage of that and get some free tips from you, of course. We all work with people in a different context, in different, maybe it's the clients, maybe it's coworkers, and we appreciate that our work styles are different.
Yes.
So what would be practical advice that you would give to people to kind of handle these differences so that perhaps it's clashes, perhaps it's I don't know, perhaps it's alignment, but not really in a useful way. I don't know if that makes sense. So, for example, if I'm finding myself in a role that doesn't involve a lot of interactions with people, but I myself am very much an extrovert, and I work perhaps with a group of like extroverts, or now, how do I? I would really be a tip as a coach to handle these clashes or to handle these dynamics that we find ourselves, tricky dynamics that we find ourselves in at the workplace because we have different work styles from the people we work with.
There are various tools or methods that people can use. If we talk about one around maybe when you're having clashes with people in terms of communicating and you're just not able to get through to someone. If someone is being very defensive and feels that everything about what they do is an attack on them as a person, attacking their personality. So you know that however you phrase a statement, defenses are up, for the person. But there are very simple tools that, you can use. An example would be one that's called AID, AID. And if you want, to, address an issue with someone and that person can be very defensive that you can't even get to the heart of the matter, A stands for the action. What exactly happened or the activity? Separating, and this you're dealing with facts. So this person perhaps maybe failed to deliver something to clients or missed a client deadline. That is what exactly happened. You have facts, it didn't get to the client when it was supposed to or in the format. So that is the issue at hand. And then I stands for the impact. What was the impact of this failed action? The client missed the submission of what have you, and this translated to X for the client, and more so for the business, it translated to X. And D is the desired outcome. But in between the impact and the desired outcome is where you invite the person to even share what exactly happened, what happened to them, that, and devoid of, blame or excuses, what exactly happened, and invite them to share how they would, either prevent this or rectify an existing thing. So you're actually separating emotions, you're separating personalities. It's not an attack. This is what needs to be done. This is what happened. This was the impact. How are we going to solve it? It, it's very structured and it just helps you navigate, all the emotions and the various personalities, that want to come into play for you to get to the desired outcome, which is a client is satisfied, revenue is generated for both the client and the business, and invariably for, the individuals who are working in the organization, full stop.
I love that. And I think it's something that all of us here can take with us and apply directly in their work. Just help people focus on whatever you find yourself in a tricky situation, focus on what the action was, the impact, and the desired outcome.
Outcome.
And it's an amazing, simple, but really, I think, life-changing tool. Yeah. Amadeus, what do you think?
I love it. Aid. Come to people's aid. Sometimes
Yeah.
give aid to
Yes.
yourself.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes.
Yes,
Thank you, Coach.
definitely.
So we are approaching, we're almost approaching the hour, and I do want to give chance for the people who are with us on this call to ask a few questions. But before that, I have one last question for you, Coach. And this is going to be a bit of a trick question in a way, because you have two hats that you wear. You are an experienced executive, but you're also a coach.
Yeah.
So both as an executive and as a coach. And I feel the dichotomy here will be very interesting, or maybe it's the synergy. What's one thing you wish every team knew about working with diverse work styles? If there's just one thing as an executive and a coach that you feel, if every team from these two perspectives knew this one thing, it would make life for all of us so much better.
Huh. It will be that we're as unique as we are different. And each person, with their uniqueness and their differences, when we bring it together, it's like a pot of stew with all the different things that comes. When you bring it together, you make a beautiful, I mean, the outcome is really great. And it's your role, as a team leader, if you're a leader, it's your role to ensure that the various personalities can complement, blend, and still stand out in, all towards, the shared outcome or the goal of the team. And then each individual also has a role to play, and their responsibility as a person, coupled with the leader's responsibility, is to make a demand of us, being at our best at all times. Like I said, I do a bit of linear thinking. For me is I have to see things in my head, and once I see it, I'm able to go. So I am a part of this team. This is my role in the team. This is the overall goal of this team, and this is the part I play. I need to ensure that I play my part. Now I also need to understand what are the roles of every member of my team and how do I connect and support everybody for us to together achieve the team goals. That for me is very, very important, that each person has to know that you're different, but you're also unique. And the other person is not crazy. At times we think that, where did they get all these people from? They are just different. But when you understand their differences and know how to merge and, complement or even work together with those differences, but towards a, goal, life can be good.
Fantastic. I
Yeah.
love it. We have a tool like that actually here at Zanga that we call You Are Not Your Role,
Mm,
which is, I think, the same as what you're speaking about, just articulated a little bit different.
yes.
Um,
Mm.
we are now at the Q&A. Dear audience, it's open to you. If you have a question, please put it in the chat, or you can raise your hand. We will unmute you and let you ask your question to Coach Adeyanju right now. This is an amazing opportunity. While we wait for people to put up their hands or to post, we have a question from Gloria. 1 second, Gloria. You will be able to unmute yourself just now. Gloria, over to you. What is your question, please?
Okay, great. I just stumbled onto this webinar and decided to log on. My question to Coach Adeyanju is that when you're working with a team and you get an assessment, what is the next step for you as a team member? Are you supposed to memorize the personality of your other teammates so that you get to know how you respond to them? What is the best practice so that so that the assessment achieves what it's meant to achieve? That's one part of the question. The other question is, what has the research shown about how teams are able to to work together after having known each other to an extent where they're able to work together and use what they know about each other's personalities to work together?
Okay. I wish there was, a magic wand that one could just wave once you have that understanding and whew, you're released and everybody, goes. It won't happen that way. I think the first step, when you have, you've done like, that team assessment and in which, all the work styles of the team comes through, apart from each person understanding and having their own individual report, it's always good also to just, kind of like share how each style thinks, how each style learns? How, and you find people nodding because yes, they can understand. And then how are the best ways that each style could speak to or to communicate to other, styles? What are they looking for? Someone who is a big picture or visionary thinker, is not looking for details. Someone who is detail oriented wants the research, wants, everything. So when you're communicating, with people, you know how to adapt, to all of that. Then also in understanding, people's personalities, everybody knows each personality or each work styles, you have your motivators, that things when they're present, you're motivated, and you have the things that demotivate you as well. So you can't memorize everything. It's also by observation and interaction you with members of your team that you get to really know people and you get to adapt, your styles to them, and also their attitudes, within the team as well. There's some people that when, a project comes without top line, they get it, they can see, you've painted a picture of the outcome, it's let's do it. Some people, it's let's do it happily, let's do it with a song. Yes, they're excited, they need to have the excitement into all of this. And for some people, it's let's do it right. All the T's need to be crossed, the I's dotted. How do you accommodate all of that? And I think, this is the beauty of the leader on being aware of the various styles in their team. And it can be, it may sound daunting that how, especially if you have, a very multicultural and a widely dispersed team, how do you manage all of that? I believe, also enlisting members of the team and making a demand on, people would help, the team to move forward. Will there be times where this vehicle will kind of like veer off the road? Yes. And I think this is where that initial team alliance comes in, where you have agreed this is how you as a team will work together. This is what you expect of every member of the team. Respect, things like that. Everybody is fully agreed. And when you have new members coming in as well, you onboard them, to that team alliance. And you're constantly refining and checking in with members of the team as you go along. Gloria, I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit on Gloria's question, she did ask about the research. So
Yes,
yes, research does support that work assessments do help teams work together better. But what I would warn against is now holding on to these identities firmly or strongly. Just because an assessment said you are more analytical as a thinker doesn't mean you can't do work that's not in that nature. So previously, I've worked with a few people to kind of help them do their work style assessments and kind of unpack the reports that came from that. And one thing that we would do with that, so this is what the report says about you. It says, for example, you don't prefer to work with data, you prefer to work more with people. And your career goals are to be, for example, a project manager, and it involves a balance of both. So you might need to learn to work and to just develop a more positive attitude to work with the data as well as the people. And it's doable because it's a competence, it's something people can be trained to develop.
Yeah.
And so it's useful to understand and definitely helps understand and optimize a team. Then it's also useful to remember that people change and in different situations, people act different ways. So let's not hold too firmly to the identities that we get in work styles.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't diminish the usefulness of the assessments.
Love it. And if you'd like to find out a little bit more about the unique high context culture, leadership development assessments and analytics that Zanga African Metrics provides to organization, coaches, and individuals, please visit our website, zangametrics.com. The link is in the chat and will be in the description of this video. Dear audience, we still have a few minutes. Are there any other questions for Coach Adeyanju? She's here. Normally, this is premium coaching. You'd have to pay a whole lot of money to access her knowledge and her expertise. Now you get to pose a question, even if you are a fellow professional. Maybe you're a coach. Maybe you want to get a few ideas and tips, some nuggets. Post your question in the chat, or unmute yourself. We still have a few minutes. If not, Doreen and I will definitely pose one or two more questions. Does anybody have a question so far from the audience? You can raise your hand or just unmute yourself. The mics are open. Any questions so far? Or maybe Doreen, do you have a question while we wait for the audience?
I don't have a question per se. It's been a great session, and thank you, Adeyanju, for
you
joining
too,
us
Doreen.
today. It's usually myself and Amadeus just talking back and forth. So it's good to kind of change it up and get, of course, this amazing insights from you. And one thing that I was thinking as you kept talking is, should I have pursued a career as a coach? Because it's such a great way of expressing things that come up with teams, how those can be navigated. And it's just been amazing to listen to all your insights. So thank you so much, Adeyanju.
Thank you, Doreen. What's stopping you?
Like I said, I don't really like to talk to people a lot.
But we're not really talking to anyway. We will take that out. The client is doing more of the talking.
True,
Yeah.
absolutely. It would be nice to kind of dabble and explore that as maybe my second act.
Okay,
maybe.
we'll be
Yeah.
waiting.
By the
Thank
way,
you.
Doreen is a great coach. We've had a training session with her before, and she's a lot better at this than she lets on. But have that conversation.
Right.
Fantastic. Adeyanju, it has been a pleasure. I want to be mindful and respectful of your time. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, dear audience, for joining us, for your questions, for your feedback. We love that you were here with us. If you're here with us live, or live, you're streaming this on LinkedIn, or later in the YouTube videos. We really appreciate your time. We don't take you for granted. Adeyanju, this was wonderful. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your experiences. I have learned something. I've learned how to give aid.
Yes. And a lot more that I will probably recall at a time that's, not now.
Yeah. Thank you so
but it
much.
will come in handy. Thank you
so much.
Adeyanju.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great session.
And
Thank you very much, everybody. And
we're
off.
The recording.
Bye-bye.
I hope you share the recording. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
I hope you share the recording.
We will. Thank you. It will be on our YouTube channel tomorrow. Subscribe and follow so that you never miss an episode. Thank you.
Thank
you. Okay, goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.